Hello and welcome to Japan Expert Insights and our Business Insights room. Every Thursday, Tim Sullivan and I, Maya Matsuoka, lead a discussion looking for insights, developments, and new opportunities for the business in Japan. In this podcast, we welcome comments, questions, and opinions. So if you haven't done so yet, join us next time. In the meantime, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region.
Good morning and welcome once again to everybody. This is our Thursday morning room of Japanese Expert Insights. I and Tim Sullivan host it together, and today we have a very special guest, Luke McDonald, who has been in Japan for several years already. He is the sales manager for Japan of the New York Wine Traders. This is a company that imports and sells boutique specialty wines and spirits and liquors from the USA, Upper New York State. So, Luke, without any further delay, let's start. I understand that you have a very interesting career, and you have been doing this in Japan for some time now. So please tell us about this. Of course, after we finish, we'll invite everybody in the audience to join us and talk with Luke, share experiences and observations about selling wine in Japan. So, Luke, let's start.
Great. Look, thanks very much, Maya. Thanks, Tim. Welcome to those people listening. Thank you for your time. I'd just like to say that first. I've been here in Japan a little bit longer than several years, actually. It flies by very quickly, but I first came to Japan in 1992, actually, and I'd graduated from chef school. I'm from Australia. I'm from Western Victoria, which is in the south part of Australia. Had a really great interest in Asian food and cooking because coming from a very small country town, there was hardly any Asian restaurants at all. So, I decided, well, okay, I'll, hedge all my bets and might go direct to Asia and start to learn about Japanese cooking. And I came with 30 other chefs. We were part of an exchange program between the Japanese governments and Australian government. And I was working up in Yamagata Prefecture, up in Tohoku, at a Japanese traditional hotel, and I worked there for a couple of years. So I've always been in the hospitality industry, always had an interest in wine and good food and especially Japanese cuisine. And it was kind of from there. Tendo City in Japan is also the home of a very well-known sake brewery called Dewazakura, and so I was like 5 minutes away from that brewery. It was from there. I've always had a sort of an interest in cuisine and the kind of industry that evolves around that. And from my chefing days, I decided to make a career shift and went back to Australia and studied marketing and Japanese at university, and then came back in the year 2000. And I was involved in a very small import company that was kind of one of the leaders, I'd say. It was a very pioneer at the time for importing craft beer and into Japan from the UK. Some of you might know it's like a Witchwood brewery. So they brewed the Hobgoblin series of brews out of Oxford in the UK. And that group then started to establish different British pubs and also restaurants here in Japan, in Akasaka and also Roppongi. And from there, my family's traditionally been in the publishing industry. So I had an interest in creating a bilingual food guide. So I joined a publishing company and produced a food guide that was in English and also Japanese. So again, continuing that theme of wine and good food and my own publishing background, it was a really great experience because there was nothing really like that at the time. It was a small magazine that came out four times a year. So, and then from there, I ended. I totally created a different change and went into the HR industry and online sales of job descriptions and job postings for different companies. So totally sort of shift there. And then I had an offer from a friend that I know in Fukuoka. He said, "Look, Luke, I really need some help with sales of our our wine products that are coming from Upper New York State, and I'd sampled the products and was like blown away and really amazing. And I thought, wow, these are really good. So I, having that interest in sort of the culinary field, and I still had an interest in importing and exporting. Some friends from New Zealand that had started up their own company importing wellness and health foods from New Zealand. And so continuing on for that, I thought, okay, I'd really like to get further into this industry, and that's where I took on this sales role for Japan. So in a nutshell, it's been a really steep learning curve because there are just some really amazing, qualified, knowledgeable, experts out there in the industry. We're talking, sommeliers, masters of wine. I think Japan has, per capita of any country in the world, the most number of sommeliers anywhere. So Japanese like their tests, and they like to skill up and study and achieve a certificate. And they're very driven to achieve those kind of things. And so it's been really interesting so far to be talking with shop owners, talking with supermarket buyers, just talking to regular wine fans, people have just really love wine, and they're just such a very knowledgeable, educated wine drinkers, and it's really a fun industry to be part of. Though when I joined the company, it was kind of just pre-COVID. So we've like many industries out there, we're not alone in suffering there. Of course, there are a lot of businesses that have found that very tough. The importing industry has taken its fair share of hit as well. Just for us for example, to secure a product is extremely difficult. So, that's my kind of very brief story at the moment, a kind of background. Why New York wines? Why is an Australian promoting New York Finger Lakes wines? It's an amazing area. Really, it's very unique in its geographic location. The link that Maya put in the chat section there, you'll just see the speech bubble on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. If you click there, there's a link, and you'll see from that map the Finger Lakes. I had a friend who best described it. It's as if Wolverine decided to take some frustration out on New York, and he slashed away at the earth, and it's left these extremely long and thin finger lakes scratched into the earth. And a very cool area of America. It's very cool climate. It gets very cold, of course. It's a lot of winds, and the excuse me, how can I say, the climate area there is well suited to cool, cold varieties of grapes. So it's probably one of the best areas, I'd say, in the US for Rieslings, and it's well known for its also Pinot Noir grape varieties, and it's home to 130 different wineries, and that's not including distillers, and it's not including other support businesses and restaurants that are all around that particular location, an area of the US. Tim, have you ever been to Upper New York State, the Finger Lakes region?
No, and I had absolutely no idea that they were even growing wine. I have friends there, and my son used to live in New York City, but I don't know if he's ever been to that area, but I can ask him. But no, this is all new information to me. Really interesting, though.
Okay. I mean, traditionally, I mean, it's grapes were planted way back in the early 1800s, and they were growing grapes there. There were vineyards there, pre-prohibition. So it's a really established wine region. And a major one. I mean, 130 different wineries, producing some really great products. And then, like I mentioned, you have distillers as well. You've got coopers that are cooperages that are producing, the American oak barrels that are required for making bourbon. And that's not to all the restaurants and that whole tourism area. I mean, there are three key sort of what they call American viticultural areas, and there are about 261 of those across the US. And well, of course, about 143 of those are of course, in California. So that's really the challenge that I face. If I say American wine, the Japanese consumer will just instantly think Napa or Sonoma or the California area, which is a huge challenge. It's a good challenge for us. And there are a lot of, I mean, if you have such a strong wine region, they have the financial power to promote their own state very well. So we'll go to a wine event. I mean, the biggest area there that'll have the most, wines, of course, is California. Recently, they had a trade event that they created a Californian village up in Niseko, up in Hokkaido, because people can't travel at the moment. So they said, okay, people can't get to California. We'll bring California to Japan. And so they chose some hotels and chalets up in Niseko to create a Californian atmosphere, and barbecues and wine, and sommeliers and business owners could travel to Hokkaido and experience a broad range of wines that are actually here and new wines that are looking to come to Japan. So that takes a fair commitment and investment of a state, also an industry to promote its own product. Do we have that coming from New York State? And unfortunately, we don't. So I find my role as more of an educator more than anything else, because we don't have such an extensive lineup, 150 different wines from New York State that we can use to promote or create a conglomerate, marketing effort. So it's from my role, it's been a bit hard on COVID, but it's making calls. It's connecting to people via Zoom. It's sending information. It's following up on that, and really, it's a grassroots effort. Slowly, it's getting out there, which is really great, because I think the consumer here in Japan, it is definitely changing. Basically, because how can I say? When you have such large conglomerates like Suntory and Kirin and other wine importers that are bringing in, of course, are very price conscious, and they're bringing in the most wine that they can bring in at the cheapest possible price. And as a small importer, that's very challenging, because we kind of go the other direction. We say, okay, we'll be a little bit more expensive because we're bringing more boutique and unique kind of wines that you regularly can't buy, or that you can't go to 7-Eleven, or you can't go to your Ito Yokoro, or you can't go to your regular wine shop and find. And so the most of our sales will be either directly to restaurants or online, where the consumer is at home. They'd like to purchase some different wine that they haven't tried before, and they'll purchase directly from us. And I'm just lucky that the selection that we have. Ravines, it was voted one of the top 100 wineries in the world. This is not just about the US. It's Riesling is amazing. So it's a very good product. And actually, we just sold out of their 2017 vintage, and we've just ordered a pallet of the 2020. And so we're sort of waiting for that to come in. Logistically, very difficult to get containers. They're struggling to even get pallets created in the US. Truck drivers, the whole pandemic situation has really stressed the logistics of bringing anything into Japan. So and that's wine is no exception there. The kind of challenge that we face is that also the price points, different type of promotion. Here in Japan, the other day, I was just Tim said to me, how much is your wine, Luke? And I said, it's around 3,500 yen, for a bottle of wine. Wow, that's expensive.
Well, hey, I'm retired. Cut me some slack, Luke.
Mate, I'm not complaining. This is something that I hear on an hourly, daily basis.
I go for the cheap. 2,000 yen is my limit usually. I do special occasions, so I promise I'm going to buy some wine from you guys. I will.
So, I'm only pulling your leg, mate. But as I said, it's something that I hear on a daily basis, because Japan is very, very lucky. I mean, we're in a very we're in a very unique a very lucky country where, in Asia, we're the second largest wine importer. So for such a small country, okay, it's a large population, but for such a small country to have so many different wines being imported into Japan. I mean, the sixth largest importer in the world. I mean, you think of how many countries are out there. And so Japan's very dependent on wine importers like ourselves here at New York Wines to bring in wines. Why? Because the Japanese wine industry itself is still trying to establish itself. And that's another interesting part of the conversation. I think I was talking with a wine vintner. He has his own winery, and we were talking about the Japanese wine industry and how it's trying to, establish itself and changing weather patterns. And French companies also investing in Hokkaido as well, up in Hakodate, because it's got a very similar climate, I should say, to France. That there is some shifting there in the local industry, because I think the national, average consumption of Japanese locally grown wine is like half a glass. So, and that's per year. So that gives you some idea of how much local Japanese wine is consumed and how dependent wine fans and people who love to enjoy their wine is dependent on importers and foreign brands coming in. And so, yeah, this is where I can go to my local 7-Eleven store. I can go to a very small Sakaya-san, a liquor shop close to me, 1,000 yen. I can find 1,500. It's a great wine, and I really think wine's not. The quality of the wine these days is not based on price. So if someone said to me, would you like to pay for a 3,000 bottle of wine or a 400 bottle of wine? If I had the money, of course, I'd like to try the more expensive wine, but is it a better wine than the cheaper wine? There's only one way to find out. You have to try it. And sometimes a person's palate is more suited to the cheaper wine. It's a very, how can I say? Wine for me is just like clothing. It's a personal thing, and it's involving taste. It's involving smell. It's involving the story of where it's made, the people who make it, and how they make it, why they make it, and everyone has their own interests, and that's what I really enjoy about wine and spirits and this industry. But how important is wine? For Japan, I think. Yeah, in the last 30 years, I read the other day, it's like, it's quadrupled in its consumption of wine over the last 30 years. So it just also shows that, the wine industry, it might not seem compared to other alcohol areas, while it might not seem to be making huge gains, year after year, the consumption is slowly increasing. Some current trends are sparkling wine. Sparkling wine is it's being sourced from different countries. My own home country, Australia, I can see newer brands coming in. Other sparkling wines from the US and it's also interestingly from the UK. I was at Foodex, a very large food exhibition here in Tokyo the other day, and there was some really good sparkling wines coming out of the UK. So yeah, this is some current trends at the moment. Price range canned wines, wines coming in cans, especially pre-mixed. In Australia, we call them splitzers. They might have another name in the US. I'm not quite sure. But it's essentially a mix of sparkling, I should say wine with like a soda or another aerated component. New Zealand is another country that's importing that into Japan. I noticed some canned New Zealand flavored wines that are carbonated naturally coming from New Zealand. So this is where I think the Japanese consumers they've had enough of the massed imported huge brands that have come in over the last 10 to 20 years. Without singling out certain countries and certain brands. I mean, you can go to a convenience store. You can imagine you've got how many convenience stores across Japan. They all have to be supplied with the same wine. That that takes a huge purchase and a huge logistics effort to do that. So on the reverse side, my feeling is, and talking to a lot of people, that Japanese wine drinkers and sommeliers and people in the industry, in hotels and restaurants, are now looking for something different. They're in an exploration mode where they're really interested in regions that haven't been heard of, which is really perfect for us. Thank you to the Japanese consumer who's now starting to be a little bit more assertive in their purchasing. They're really interested in wines from Georgia, or wines from Hungary, or an unknown wine region in Chile, or ourselves when I'm introducing our wines first to a consumer. New York, I didn't know they grow wine there. It's kind of like what Tim's reaction was, and which is, for me, I have to start from ground zero, really from zero, and this is time after time. So it's kind of like what I said before. I play, I'm in sales, of course, but I feel like I'm like the teacher, the sensei, I'm the marketer, I'm the promoter. I should be in tourism sometimes, and then I'm switching into winemaking and I think this is a habit, not a habit. When I say that, it's not a bad habit, but the Japanese consumer is often like that. I think they really want the details of and a lot of the people in the audience are in business, and it's probably I'm preaching to the choir. Well, I'm not really preaching, but the Japanese consumer are really detail orientated. So they want to know, what side of the hill did this grape grow, or what was the terroir, what sort of soils, what sort of gravel, or they really want to know things in detail, and especially whether it's natural wine or is it biodynamic, or they really like to know their detail, and if you don't know it, then you have to find it out and get back to them, and eventually, after we've gone through and introduced and educated and they feel confident in that particular product, they'd like to try it. And not too many tasting events these days. They slowly, in Tokyo now, I think over the last 3 to 4 months, there are certain events now that's starting to open. So that's also exciting for us as well, that we can attend events and people can sample. But we've mainly been doing sample packages over line where consumers can purchase, 4 to 5 different wines at a particular good price, so that they can actually sample the wines and get to know our product.
Yes, just going back to some of the points which you made, Luke, we have seen a lot of development throughout the world, development of winemaking, and the global map of winemaking has changed significantly during the past 20 years, because a lot of French winemakers, also American winemakers, they invest in new regions, as you said. And luckily, yes, Japan has been fortunate to be prepared, if I can say, to have prepared the market, because first Japan imported wines from famous regions in France, then in the United States, in Europe as well, other parts of Europe as well. And now the consumers, after they have tasted those wines from the famous regions, they are looking for something more specific, something special. And I smiled when you mentioned that the Japanese consumers want to know details about the wines they're about to try, because that's how the Japanese people are. I mean, I have been working in the field of travel and tourism for quite some time now, and one of the characteristics of the Japanese who travel overseas is that they always travel very well prepared. They study, about the destination they're about to visit before the trip, and they know so much. And when they go to that destination, they want to know a lot of details, and they ask questions which very few other tourists ask. So it's I just smiled when you mentioned that, and we always have to keep in mind how important details are for the Japanese consumers, no matter what they consume. So it could be wine, it could be food, it could be travel, it could be digital products as well. So it's really something which is worth keeping in mind. And I wanted to ask you one question. So in order to sell wine in Japan, do you need any special licenses? What is the barrier for market entry here? if you're willing to share that, of course.
Oh no, look, I'm totally. It's available information on the internet. I'm more than happy to share. I mean, like any country, the production and selling of alcohol is extremely controlled by the government. Of course, it's the Japan Taxation Bureau that controls the licensing that you need to not only produce but also import into Japan. Over the last 10 years, I think they've slowly seen that it's been too regulated, like it's been too, let's say, stringent. I think they went sort of overboard maybe 20 years ago, a bit further on. when in your bubble years where there are a lot of licenses given out to, let's say, liquor shops. So no matter what area you went to, there was always a liquor shop, that people could purchase. And there are certain areas that you can only have a certain number of liquor shops, and those licenses could not be transferable. So they would have to stay in the family. And so it became, the mood in Japan slightly changed from there to sort of, okay, we gave out too many licenses, and so they started to stop people from gaining the liquor license to sell. And it certainly became more competitive as nowadays, you've got drug stores, you have convenience stores, you have supermarkets, you have department stores, you nearly any store that you can go to. Essentially, there's always some sort of beer, wine, Japanese sake, available. So I think that also forced the taxation department to relook at its alcohol licensing, and certainly internet has played a huge part in that, and different licenses coming in that, if someone wants to start up a business of selling or importing, they can do that. They don't need a physical shop per se to do that. And so there has been there was licenses created, a license created for someone who just wants to sell online only. And can it be done? Yes. I mean, now you have your Raktens, your Amazons, and countless other wine importers and wine shops that have a online a presence, including ourselves, because I think it's like 50%, just over 50% of all alcohol sales is now conducted online. So, how difficult it is to come into Japan. I think I also have some background in the startup industry. So I think if you've got the financial resources and you want to start up a company in Japan, it takes a little bit of financial backing to gain your license to sell in Japan. But the startup environment is bubbling at the moment in a good way. It's sparkling along, so to speak. There are a lot of areas. It's one of the reasons that our head office is in Fukuoka, because they have a very good startup industry. It's a very close to Korea, China, Taiwan's. It's very internationally, feeling to the city, and that's where the owner of the company is set up business. That they had a startup scheme there for businesses that wanted to start in Japan. So that's the reason that it was an easy in, I suppose, for our company to start in Fukuoka rather than, say, for example, Osaka or Tokyo. But there are other regions now that's like 6 years ago. I think the owner first started the company. So now, as of today, I'm in my sort of network. You have Sendai, you have Hokkaido, you have Okinawa, you have Osaka with its now it's pushing for casinos and other events. The startup environment is improving, and thank God. And in our industry, there are other companies as well that are setting up online. There's a couple of companies that are doing a really great membership system where people purchase a membership. It's like a wine club, and then they receive different wines every month from different regions around the world. So people are starting to get a little more creative in trying to start up their business and do something different. And I think that's really good for Japan.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much. I have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to save them hopefully for a future room with you. And I'm going to throw the floor to Yuka-san, who has been waiting patiently. Good morning, Yuka, or good evening. You are.
Well, actually, good afternoon. I think this is the first time that I get to ask you a question, Luke. So that's great. I think you must be a great guest because you're willing to share all kind of information. I have two questions. One, I just cannot help noticing Maria and Tim this room has many guests who are trying to import different kind of alcohol to Japan. I just cannot help thinking, is Japan known as a huge alcohol consuming nation? That's number one question. Number two, and then I'm trying to think in numbers, and I did some search. The wine consumption trend thereof in Japan, and I have these statistics. Thank God for the free internet. For the last okay, so I only have a 2019. That's the most current I could find. But yes, you're right. From 2010, the wine consumption has increased, but it peaked in 2015 and sort of plateaued ever since. So my question is it becoming like market share gain because total market is not growing? So, and then you said that, sometimes price point can be a sticky negotiation point. And I'm like, Tim, I don't know, $30 a bottle is kind of too pricey for me because I'm a, big fan of Uniqlo. So that's just a sort of like a reference point. Anyway, so if you could address those two questions of mine, please. Thank you.
I'll address the first question about the consumption. I mean, as I said, it's just previously, the sixth largest importer. So, and the second largest of Asia. So it kind of gives you some indication, of the wine consumption. I think the consumer there is it's at two levels. I mean, you have a consumer as far as the B2B is concerned or B2C. So this is where you have a lot of imports that'll happen. You need wine for cooking, you need wine for products. It's not just the regular, drinker off the street. So that there are different elements there that within the industry itself, a lot of imported, like a bulk importing of wine, and then it being rebranded or sold, in bulk to industry. But then the regular consumer, like wine drinkers, like us here, some people in the audience, hopefully, that kind of 2010 mark that you mentioned, Yuka. I think the biggest change there is the international tariffs and treaties that Japan was negotiating with other countries, specifically Europe. I think around that 2019 time, if my memory serves me right, I think there was the Japan and so the European Union coming to remove a lot of the tariffs that were on wines, to try and make it easier, not only for wine to come to Japan, but it's also Japan to export various products to Europe. So and when you remove those tariffs, that can greatly affect the purchasing power that Japanese importing companies have. It makes it more attractive because they can purchase at a lower price. And then that can be passed on to the consumer, and this is where that sort of pricing points to get 1,000. I go back to Australia, and I have to spend $40. Say for example, 4,500 yen for a regular. When I say regular, it's like a good wine. Now. And then I come back to Japan and I can get like a great wine for like 1,000 yen or even 800 yen, like at the lower end of the spectrum, of course. So. But then I can go get something at Sunzan, I can just get something at Roxanne, I can go right up to whatever price range I want. So the variety and choice that we have here in Japan is astonishing. And it's one of the reasons that I really had to learn about wines, because when I came from Australia, I only had Australian wine to drink. I might have one German, Blue Nun or something like a very well-known brand. There might have been one or two American wines, but I hardly had any exposure to international wines in Australia back in the day when I first started to experience wine. And I was only like 5 hours away from Adelaide, which is like a really great wine region. I go to Melbourne and there's the Yarra Valley. So I had wine around me. So I didn't really need to look outside of Australia. And then I come to Japan and there's no Australian wine, and you've got the bottles in the Italian, and I don't speak French either, so I have to get out my wine pocket guide and away I go. So I think Japanese consumers are exactly the same, and I think the cheaper wine is of those lessening of those tariffs has been huge for the increasing the consumption at a lower price. And I have to say, sorry, Yuka, if you can just quickly repeat your second question. 'Cause,
Yeah, actually, so yeah, exactly. There's the fact that you said that in the Japanese consumers have access to the wine at all pricing points. That is that fact make your job like hard, or like how? Okay, in other words, how you are sort of differentiating your wine as opposed to, let's say, the wine from California. How, because the both are same from U.S. So you have to differentiate your wine somehow, right?
Yeah, this is true, and this is one of the really interesting parts of selling and marketing is that it doesn't matter what's the difference between a BMW and an Audi, or a BMW and a Lamborghini. They're both cars. They both got wheels. Like they're different pricing points. Or you could go with a Toyota. For wine, it's going back to what Maya was saying. It's about the region, and it's about the winemaker. It's the people, because not everyone can purchase a winery and run a winery like Francis Ford Coppola. You've just got various. There's so many different wineries, but not all wine is the same. Thank God. I mean, there's just so many great varieties and so many winemakers and so many people that are invested in the industry, and they do the best that they do. And so, how I differentiate our particular products is everyone has a different palate. I mean, maybe the wines that I have in my selection, maybe you really love apples, and maybe look, we have a really great. I was talking this about Tim the other day. Like we have a Pomur, which is an apple liqueur. It's produced in New York State up in Ithaca. It's a cider company. They take the apples from farms that are no longer being operated. They still have the apple trees on these farms, and they create some beautiful cider and some Pomur, and so it's matching the kind of wines, spirits, liqueurs that we have in our portfolio to a person's taste and what they like, and that's how I differentiate. Our particular products based on people's preferences and what they like, and like I mentioned before, it's just like the fashion industry or the clothing industry. Some people like yourself, sorry, I forget the Japanese clothing brand. I wear it myself. Uniqlo, sorry. And some people just are really happy with their Uniqlo. It's comfortable, it's durable. But then there's somebody they like wearing their Gucci. It's their brand. It's what they like. What makes them feel them, who they are, and that's how we differentiate our wine, because people differentiate themselves as well. Thank you.
I have to ask. I went to the website to what's the lake? Finger Lake. Anyway, so the website sort of promote like a winery trail. So I'm just thinking. So what people do there? Like you drink wine and they hike, and then you go to another winery and they drink wine and they hike again. Is that what people do? Then I'm in.
Yeah. Look, it's part of the wine industry. It's tourism. It's hospitality. I mean, if you drive from New York, there's 6 hours. That you've got a long drive, and you get there. You want to stay the night, or you want to stay overnight. It's destination tourism. You want to reach a destination. You want to spend 2 or 3 days there. It's a trail, so it means you can go around the lakes. The wineries are dotted around the lakes, and my map probably doesn't do it much justice. But if you search online, the wineries are dotted around the lake, so you have a trail that you can go to and visit different wineries. Probably not too many in a day, but you can select ones that you'd like to visit, or go to a cider distiller, or you could go to different restaurants and try. It's an industry in its own, I would highly recommend it if you're looking for a wine and gourmet holiday in New York State.
Hiking is much better than driving when you're drinking wine.
I know.
Yes, we all have to conscious of that, of course. If there's anyone else in the audience that has any, thank you very much, Yuka. That's really great. Yes, it is the first time you've asked me a question, so this day will be etched in history. But I appreciate the questions. If there's anyone else that would like to ask,
I just had a couple of comments because I wanted to highlight what Yuka said. Yuka asks great questions, and this is just anecdotally. I look at my boomer friends. I'm an old boomer, right? A lot of them are heavy drinkers, even today. Some of them have tapered off because of their age. But I look at young people, and from my perspective, young people is 30s, and under, or even 40s, a lot of them don't drink, right? And I mean, I've seen a trend. Some of these are jazz musicians. They're in their 30s, and you're thinking, young kids, they drink and smoke, especially if they're into jazz. And not these guys, they're real clean, right? But to that point, I've noticed, like on Japanese TV, there seems to be a big push to tap into the female market of drinkers. And that's just my, again, it's anecdotal, but I feel like there may be a little bit of a struggle. And again, I could be completely misreading it, and I don't have stats to back me. So that's one. And then the second one was about differentiation. And I feel like to differentiate, you have to educate your target market. They need to know who you are. And I'm thinking in Japan, maybe you have to play up the local meibutsu angle, because that is almost a compelling reason to buy a product. It's certainly within Japan, when you go to different prefectures and they say, this is the meibutsu, and now you got to buy it as either because you want it or it's an omiyage. So even I, a casual wine drinker, didn't know anything about the area that you spoke of in New York. So to me, this is new. And I mentioned, Luke, that I was buying this Portuguese wine. I don't have it in front of me, but it's not a well-known company. But you know what? Every time I get it delivered, they send me a beautiful postcard of the local area. So it's like introducing me to the area. So that's their way of reaching out to me. Anyway, just some observations. But thank you.
I think it's some really great observations, and I think just to address those. And this can happen in any product. I think being able to communicate and relate and focus on the female market here in Japan. I mean, I think I will stretch my neck out and say they are the trendsetters. They lead the trends in so many areas of Japanese the marketplace, and I think around the world at the moment, wine companies and are trying to younger market. How do we interact and with our products? Because I know I certainly don't drink the sort of things that my dad did or my grandfather did. They are pretty set in their ways, and so as a younger person, you kind of like to go out and do your own thing, right? No matter what it is. And I think drinking is no exception. And this is where say, for example, the sake industry, the Japanese sake industry has faced a lot of challenges, because this is where wine has really helped in that generational shift. Because we don't want to drink sake. We're not like our parents. We want to drink wine, or we want to drink whiskey, or we want to drink highball, or so that the number of choices are out there. And so the larger companies certainly like to focus on the female market, because whatever the females are looking at or purchasing or writing about or blogging about, will filter down to the male market, and that's part of the differentiation process. I think definitely, the tourism, the getting to educating about a particular area, and it relates back to that meibutsu. If you're going to be in New York, or if you want to try something in New York, or you visited New York, or you have family there, or you're thinking about going there, why not try some New York wine? Sometimes hard to get. Sometimes the wine is like, okay, no, we don't want to export to Japan because we want to keep stock. Like we had that happen the other day. We don't want to export to Japan because we just want to keep the stock and sell to the American market only. Younger markets looking for something different. And this is why we made the decision to sort of expand our portfolio, and we're bringing some cherry wine in from Denmark. It's an amazing product. It really, you wouldn't think that you could make. Of course, there are fruit wine out there, but this is something exceptional. It's called Frederiksdal. They're probably the world's leading, vintner of wine by using cherries, and so. Yeah, again, a different flavored product, different, of course, price, product. It's a premium product, but yeah, something different for the market that they can try, that they can experience. We have, I think there's only 400 master of wine in the world, and one of them is working at this brewery to try and sorry, I shouldn't say brewery, this winery to create wines that are out of cherries, that people can enjoy with meats, that can enjoy with savory cheeses, salted cheeses, all different sorts of things. So yeah, this is our next forte into the younger market, trying to help them with something new.
Yes, look, from a marketing point of view, it's really interesting what you just said, and the points which you touched upon, because in Japan, the young generation, they do not want to be like their parents, even not like their grandparents. But at the same time, I have noticed that there is a general trend towards maintaining healthy lifestyle, and sometimes alcohol does not fit into that frame, right? So, and in this sense of the word, there are a lot of drinks which probably try to, let's say, to fit into the frame of healthy lifestyles and not drinking. So I have seen a lot of chuhais which have very low percentage of alcohol, not like wine. And of course, I can see that young people here prefer to have those drinks, or the ones which you mentioned in the beginning, like wine, which is infused with carbonated water or something like that. So I wonder whether such drinks, and that trend is generally putting the wine consumption in jeopardy, or is there a way to, to approach that from the point of view of a wine trader?
It's really interesting question, and thanks for bringing it up, Maya. I think everyone, especially because of COVID, has had to hit the reset button. I mean, this is a trend that's been happening actually before COVID, but COVID's sort of really accentuated of people looking at their health, and in more detail than before. So, and so also consuming at home as well. That's also a factor that's driving this. And from a wine producer's perspective, I mean, wines that can suit certain demographics. Say, for example, your vegan market, or those people that are really conscious about biodynamic wines, how they're grown. The kind of they're using chemicals, they're using pesticides, and then there's also the push of to stop the fermentation process. Winemakers using some sulfates to stop the fermentation and then bottling, and there's a certain push for wines that without the sulfates. So this is the trend. Definitely in Japan is not of quantity; it's of quality, and I think that's also a thing for us. We try and import quality products because people they're not trying to drink as much as they possibly can. They're just trying to drink something that they find that they really enjoy, and that's the key for us. I think that's the key for the wine industry. I mean, there are a lot of products out there, and there's a lot of great products there. But I think that the habits are definitely less product but more quality, or a product that can be enjoyed over a longer period of time. And say, for example, the cherry wine that we bring in, once it's open, say for example the Rancio, which is for those that I'll just quickly explain that Rancio. They take the cherry, it's fermented with the skins and the actual cherry pips there, so you've got a lot of flavors. Then it's put into the juice is put into a glass canister that's sat outside for like 2 years, and then it's put into French oak barrels, and it sits there for another year, so that the fruit flavors and the profile of the wine is actually changing. So the quality and the effort that goes into making like a product like that, the story, it really resonates with the consumer, and I think that also that's part of the process, so that we educate the consumer. They're interested in the products, and hopefully for a long time to come. So I don't think because of the health shift and that, and there's always going to be that. But I think for those people that like wine, they'd like to drink it as part of their lifestyle. It's not an overconsumption. It's more of product that they really enjoy. So I think the industry itself is having to look at that. You have various stories that sort of say, if you drink a glass of wine, it's better for your health, and then you have a story the next month that says, drinking less wine because it can create health problems. But that's not just the wine industry. That can be anything. You overeat on eggs, or you eat too much sushi, or you overeat on hamburgers. It's going to have just the maybe even worse effects. So I think it's a balance of things that I'd like to promote, and I think that's the way for the industry forward.
A great response, Luke. I thought, that was a great reply. But do they still say that a glass of red wine is good for your heart, or they are changing those stories?
I want to believe that. You don't ask them.
Moderation is
okay. Like anything else, like exercise and alcohol, the moderation is a key. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Luke, for the response. I believe that we can continue this conversation in future rooms because there is a lot to talk about wine production, the market in Japan, and there have been, as you said, new trends here. It will be interesting to see how these trends develop in the next couple of years as well. So I hope that you're up for continuing this conversation here, because also there are some people in the audience who do import drinks and other foods and goods from overseas.
I would be happy. Yeah, I think it's such a really interesting, segment of Japan. I mean, Japan has such great food and great cuisine, but there are opportunities for like we import a wine stopper that preserves wine. We help a company promote chocolate from Peru. We have pomeur, we have spirits, we have vodka that's produced in New York. So if you don't want to buy Russian vodka, a lot of people are steering away from that. We have vodka from the Finger Lakes region. Bourbon, which is created in the Finger Lakes region. There are a lot of different sort of product lines that the Japanese consumers interested in. Happy if anyone wants to reach out to me, send me a message here on Clubhouse. I'm more than happy. I have a sample package where people can select up to 4 products and say, for example, reaching out to me, you can get a 25% discount. I'm happy. I'm not doing tasting seminars at the moment, but it's something we're looking at the future. But yeah, look, I just think there's a lot of opportunity. I'm happy to discuss this as part of the room. If people are interested, if you Tim and Maya are of course interested, I'm happy to continue the conversation and look at different, whether it be a segment, whether it be bourbon, for example, or whether it be cider or something else totally unrelated, chocolate, for example. I think that there are a lot of different niche areas of the Japanese market that the companies and people can look at. It's a tough market. I have to say that. It's a really tough market. Fun market, yes, but it's really tough. Challenging, yes. Every country is, but Japan is really, you've got to have your A game there, and if you don't, well, you've got to create it, and it's a lot of fun, a lot of hard times as well. But we keep on smiling, right?
Yes, and I believe that a lot of people will agree that Japan is a really tough market to crack. But if once you're here, you can actually learn and do much better in other markets as well, based on the experience you have had in Japan.
Totally agreed. If you can do business well here in Japan, it gives you a good foundation for then going to other countries and regions, and it might not be your first stop, or if you're here in Japan and thinking of starting up a business, or you're outside Japan coming in, look, there are a lot of support services. There's JetRow, there's other companies out there that can help. And as I mentioned, if anyone wants to reach out to me, please send me a message here on Clubhouse, or I'm on LinkedIn as well. Happy to connect and be part of your network. Thank you.
Yes, and when you mentioned chocolate, my ears perked because I'm not very much into sweets, but I can always have chocolate, no matter what time of the day, no matter where I am and what I drink. So probably
Me too.
we can. Yes, that's good to know.
Chocolate club, because I'm in.
Great. Okay, so with this, let's close the room. Again, as Luke said, please reach out to him. You can connect with him on Clubhouse. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. Please also connect with us, everybody who is in the speaker's corner or who is also just listening today and couldn't join us on stage. So we're looking forward to having you here again. We have weekly rooms. One of the rooms is on Japanese politics on Sunday morning at 8:20. Another one is every second Monday with Professor Nagi on geopolitics in the Indo-Pacific. And also the Thursday morning room starting at 8 o'clock, where we talk about business topics in Japan. And hopefully we have that room on Thursday morning because we like to believe that there are ideas and opportunities you can find if you're looking for starting up your own business. Well, thank you again, and we wish you a great day and a very productive remainder of the week. And we're looking forward to seeing you again here. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Yuka. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you for coming and staying with us today. We will be on air next week on Thursday at 8 a.m. Japan time again, so join us. Until then, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region. If you want to stay informed about our upcoming events, you can follow us on Clubhouse, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Again, we're looking forward to your joining us next week. Until then, stay well and make the best of the day. See you.